And we're
Hey
live.
everyone and welcome. We live? Cool. Hey everyone and welcome to episode 17 of the Decred Assembly. We're really excited. We have a cool episode for you guys. Thank you for those who are tuning in live right now. But I'm Trace, and co-hosting with me is Luke, and then we have a special guest today, CryptoHedge. So
Welcome. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you. You can also call me Carson. I'm known by both, so you can call me Carson, CryptoHedge, whatever you want. Thank you for having me.
We really appreciate you coming on. Today's show is going to be kind of focused on going through what gives cryptocurrency value. You know, we're a lot of times caught up in like the price of things, prices going up and down, but really the main focus is going to be kind of touching on what's going to give something value in the long term. And before we get into it all, do you want to give a little introduction, Carson, just kind of your background in cryptocurrency, kind of how you got to where you're at, kind of where you accumulated your following and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, do you want me to go over like where I started originally, started getting into cryptocurrencies? So back in 2012, I was basically homeschooled, and I was like a tech research king, and I would just research everything. I was a very curious person, and I ran across Bitcoin, and it was just this, online technology that it was used on the dark web, on the Tor browser, through dark markets and stuff like that. So I was like interested, what is this thing? But I've never seen an actual currency be used in a digital form online. So I had interest in it. And then I actually bought my Bitcoins with a money pack card. I don't know if you guys remember that back in the day where you could buy Bitcoins with a money pack card. It was like the easiest exchange to get Bitcoins at the time in 2012. So I bought a money pack card from like Walgreens or CVS, and then I bought Bitcoin through like an exchange online. I still have the emails in one of my old email accounts, which is a spam account now, of the transaction. I'm chatting back and forth. I'm looking back at it. I'm like, this is crazy. Like that's where I started. So after that, I held on to these Bitcoins. It was kind of like a blind investment. I wasn't really even, purposefully investing in it. I just happened to have them. And over the years, there was interest gaining on them. People were mining. There was just a lot of talk about it. It was growing. It's literally what we're seeing right now. It's just growing constantly, exponentially, especially this year. It's been insane. But that's what I've started to notice. And I got into it. I was like, I should be trading this. So I got into trading in 2015. So now I am here. And I decided to make a YouTube channel and basically try to educate people on cryptocurrencies, what coins matter, what's the, what your mindset should be when you're thinking about cryptocurrencies, because there's so many scammers in this space, and I try to steer people away from that nonsense and help the community and educate them and et cetera, et cetera. So that's my story. That's where I am now.
No, that's good. How did you find Decred?
Decred, I found out about Decred through Charlie Lee.
Okay.
So that is where I found out about through Charlie, but I didn't really educate myself on it. I didn't know much about it because I always try to identify what is the unique feature in this coin. I mean, they're all relatively similar. You've got Litecoin, you've got Vertcoin. I mean, Decred isn't as similar to Vertcoin and Litecoin, but you know what I mean? So each coin has a different feature. They're all segregated witness coins. They all have a great team backing them, a great insight on the future adoption. So that's what I think. Sorry if I'm jumping all over the place.
About Decred through Charlie Lee too. And one of the things that I really liked about the project is that, Decred provides something that would be infeasible to implement in Bitcoin just because of the power that the miners have right now. Like moving to this hybrid proof of work, proof of stake system in Bitcoin is totally out of the question. So I thought that was really interesting, and made Decred very unique.
It's interesting, the mining and also the proof of stake. It's kind of, I don't know how that works out, but it's interesting.
It's pretty cool, because they. For those of you guys who don't really know the background about a lot of the guys, same dudes that put together BTCD Suite, and they just saw the governance issues going on with Bitcoin, and they wanted to have a way to be able to drag away the centralization of the Bitcoin network that was starting to come from, because remember it was, you know, one CPU was one vote. That was like the dream of Satoshi Nakamoto. And now we have these monstrous GPU farms, and so it's how do we provide a true consensus? And so that's kind of why, you know, I found Decred too. It was solving that issue, solving that problem. But,
the monopolized consensus, what we see right now. So
yeah, exactly. And so yeah, so how did you get started with like your YouTube and kind of like your Twitter following? Because now you're starting to kind of build a bigger basis there.
Yeah, well, I actually watched other people on YouTube, and I thought, you know, I could be doing this. Why am I sitting here? I feel like I could add value to the community. And it's like I had this push. I'm like, this should be me. Like, what am I doing? So I decided to make a YouTube channel off of the interest of seeing other people doing the same thing. And that's where I just really took off. I mean, I remember back in the day, I mean, I have followers that have been following me since I've had like 20 people on my live streams, and now I get upwards of like 400 or more on my live stream. So it's been an awesome ride. And I also made a Twitter account when I made my YouTube account, and I tried to be active on both. Twitter is like the place to be with crypto. If you don't know crypto, if you're not on Twitter, I mean, that's like that's where everything is released. You know what I mean?
That's one of the really interesting things about crypto, and how like it's so different from traditional, you know, like equity markets, or like, you know, how traditional financial advisors, they struggle like wrapping their heads around crypto, because everything lives on Twitter and Reddit, right? That's where the crypto world lives. Like there aren't any like of these traditional sources. Like you can't find out about, you know, Decred or Litecoin in your Bloomberg terminal and stuff like that. And so it definitely provides this competitive advantage for this younger generation that is, you know, that is just very familiar with you know, the internet, and it's just like normal for them to get their information through sources like Twitter.
Yeah, no, definitely, guys. So let's get right into it. You know, again, the topic is kind of to discuss what is going to give cryptocurrencies value, because now if any of you go into CoinMarketCap, you can see that there's thousands, you know, and there's ones that bring a lot of value to the table. There's ones that have, you know, prices up the wazoo that don't really have a lot of substance to the technology. And so what truly gives cryptocurrency value? And so I don't know if you want to start us off, Carson.
I mean, there's so many things that give cryptocurrency value. And I remember in my interview with Charlie Lee, we were talking about how, you know, I personally don't think, I'm on the same note with Charlie on how I don't think that there's going to be all these thousands of cryptocurrencies. You've got ICOs, what is it, 30 or more ICOs a month. It's unbelievable. And then you have other cryptocurrencies that are not really acting as a currency. They're more so acting as if they're like a stock. You're not necessarily spending the cryptocurrency. So what I look at cryptocurrencies as is a an actual currency, cryptographic currency. And that's how I look at it. I don't look at it as like you know, they have all these, they have like, what is it? There's one that's like supposed to mimic YouTube or mimic eBay. I just don't see that on what would be a cryptocurrency. And I think that the push and what we're trying to accomplish is global adoption and simplicity and ease of transacting peer-to-peer, and also through businesses. I mean, think about sending a Bitcoin or a Litecoin across the globe instantly, not having to go through money transfers, not having to wait through days to get this money. So it's like, it's all about simplicity, and I think it's going to be acted as a currency. And maybe there'll be other things that come in play. I know they have 10x Pay, which is a Visa card or whatever. Maybe that'll add into the play, but I just don't see all these other coins. I think it's going to be like a handful of coins, maybe like 20, 25 coins that actually stay with us through the next years. So,
yeah.
How do you see the cross-chain atomic swaps on Lightning Network affecting that thesis?
It affects it in the best way possible, because basically you're literally eliminating the scaling issue. It's completely diminished, because what you're doing, and you already know, this is my understanding of it, is that with Lightning Network, you basically transact off-chain, and then you're basically rewarded. Like, isn't that how it works? It's an off-chain transaction, and then it goes on to the blockchain and processes. So basically, if we didn't have Lightning Network, we would have just a clutter of transactions on the blockchain that slows down the transacting time. So you have Lightning Network that you basically can transact off line, or basically, I don't know how to explain it, and then it's instant, but then the transaction goes on the blockchain to process once your transaction is finished. So it's easy for point of sale transactions.
Yeah, and I think
exactly.
Oh,
so here, to break it down just a little bit more, in case like people in the audience aren't necessarily familiar with what Lightning Network is. So Lightning Network is what's called a second layer solution. And it is attempting to solve the scaling solutions that these cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are having, where you can only have a certain number of transactions per second on the actual blockchain. And so what Lightning Network provides is basically you will lock your Bitcoin or your Litecoin or your Decred up, and you can, at that point, you'll move it over to the second layer of the Lightning Network. And once it's on the Lightning Network, transactions are near instant. There are very low fees. Now, you're giving up a little bit of security for, you don't get anything for free. So for this, instant transactions and low fees, you're giving up a little bit of security. But if you're doing things like making everyday purchases, buying coffees, like you don't need your transaction to necessarily be recorded on the blockchain. If you think about it, anytime you send a transaction on the blockchain, that transaction gets broadcasted to all the nodes in the world. And so it gets saved on thousands and thousands of computers, right? And so for high value transactions, that's important. That's what, basically adds this decentralization to these cryptocurrencies that help secure it and make them censorship resistant. But for lower value transactions, you don't need that security. And so you can make that trade-off by moving those coins, locking them up on the blockchain, moving them to the Lightning Network, and transacting on the Lightning Network for low fees and near instant transactions.
Isn't simple payment verification going to add on to that as more simplicity to transactions?
Yes, and so that's nice too, because it kind of allows for, again, I guess this is kind of like a hybrid way of looking at it. But when you use your credit or debit card and you swipe it at the store, it seems like that money comes out instantaneously, but if you look in your bank statement right away, sometimes you don't even see the transaction there, or it's pending for 24 to 48 hours. And so there's something happening there. The bank is able to verify that you have those funds, or that you have that line of credit that is still sufficient enough for that transaction right there. So they're fronting the money in a way to be able to have that transaction go through. But the Lightning Network, I believe, and the simple payment verification is going to implement some shape of a smart contract to allow that payment to be verified instantaneously.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Luke.
So I'm not well versed in the SPV yet, so no.
Yeah, but definitely something in the pipeline, which is exciting. But I mean, that brings a great point to the table, is just that these currencies, they have to bring something to the table. And you hit the nail on the head. A big portion of what's going to bring these cryptocurrencies value is being able to use them as digital cash. Because if it sits on your computer and it's accruing value because of all this speculation, that's great. And that's kind of where we get into the discussion. What is the difference between prices fluctuating up and down and true value?
Yeah, it's really not speculation. I mean, I have so much faith that there is a push, and there's absolutely no reason. I think that I at this point where I am now, from my experience, I don't see that there's any way that blockchain technology will not replace the world financial system. There's just absolutely, it doesn't make sense for them not to do that. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? For it to an extent?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm on the same page as you. I agree.
What's the point of all of this to not accomplish that?
Yeah,
right. And I think like blockchains in general, like it's the concept that there's this cypherpunk kind of like manifesto, and it's not necessarily like overthrowing the global financial system or overthrowing government. It's about taking things that can be converted to software and removing the human element from them. Anytime you have like the human element, you have, the potential for errors, you have the potential for corruption. And so anything that can be moved to software, it just makes sense. It makes the world more efficient. It makes the playing field leveler. And so we're just now, blockchains are kind of like the next step of the internet that are allowing people basically from all over the world to agree on a ledger, right? And so that's kind of like, in my mind, what at the core what blockchain is about. It's moving human functions to software, and blockchains allow it to interact on a global level because they have these consensus mechanisms that allow everybody to come to a consensus or an agreement when normally they wouldn't be able to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what brings about the importance of a proper governance. And so, I mean, it's very timely in this sense of kind of chatting about, you know, different forks, specifically like with Bitcoin, and kind of what that's done to the market, and kind of how that's transforming the way that people are perceiving, you know, how to create a new chain or a new cryptocurrency. You know, if you can just fork Bitcoin, you know, why not just make your own cryptocurrency? And what does that mean if these cryptocurrencies are able to kind of come out of thin air and have these market capitals, you know, of billions of dollars, but really didn't come from anything, aren't necessarily bringing any value? You know, people might argue Bitcoin Cash is better, Bitcoin's better, but it's like we all know that Bitcoin Gold is not better, and you know, as a piece of junk and just a, you know, a scheme. So
it's literally a copy of Vercoin. Sorry about that. It's literally a copy of Vercoin, Bitcoin Gold. It's literally what it is.
Yeah. And so when there's so much redundancy in just these kind of cash grab schemes that are coming through, that are seemingly like the way that, you know, Bitcoin was supposed to show consensus, because if people didn't like the change that was being made, they could break off and make a new one. And so how valuable would you say that true consensus is, and, you know, what are a way that we can try to move a project towards consensus?
Me?
Yeah, anyone.
Yeah. I think that it's extremely important. I think that Decred, in my opinion, I think Decred could, like, it's the attractive Bitcoin, in my opinion. That's how I look at it. Since you have the self-governance, basically equality within the coin, that literally solves the problem with consensus. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's like kind of how a lot of us found Decred. And, you know, specifically, I think consensus is good and all, but, you know, how the consensus is pointed makes all the difference, because we can all agree it's like, oh, this chain is great or this chain's not. But I think where a lot of things get held up on are the actual implementations and how to indicate that we want these changes to occur or we don't want them to occur. And so, like, having a proper proposal system, having a proper way to be able to roll these things out and have people be able to agree and vote on these things in a timely, structured manner, I think is the biggest hit. And, you know, we start to talk about DAOs, or decentralized autonomous organizations, and they kind of seem like a fantasy, but in reality, it's going to require this kind of consensus model. It's going to require a proper proposal system. And, you know, that's something that Decred is starting to roll out with the Politeia. And Luke, if you kind of want to hit a little bit on what Politeia is doing and kind of where we're at with that.
Sure, absolutely. So first, let me give, because I'm sure that we have a lot of Carson's followers watching this, and they may not be as familiar with Decred as me and you are. So I'm going to give like a brief background on what Decred is and what problems it sets out to solve and what its value proposition is. So Decred sets out to solve two main problems. The first problem is that there's no formal mechanism in Bitcoin or in Litecoin to solve disputes. So you have these different parties, such as the developers, the miners, businesses, and all these parties have their own self-interest, right? And so this leads to disputes, such as the SegWit dispute between the developers and the miners in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And because there's no actual mechanism to solve these disputes, it creates political gridlock and stalls innovation. And so what Decred did to address this is that we have a hybrid proof of work, proof of stake, consensus algorithm where each block, you know, in Bitcoin, each block is validated by just the miners with their proof of work. So in Decred, each block is mined using proof of work, similar to Bitcoin, but then it has to be validated by the stakers as well. So if you own Decred, you can choose to lock it up and stake your Decred, and you get a reward for this. And what you're actually doing is you're locking your Decred up, and then you're validating blocks. So what this means is that if you know, miners try and do something, you know, abuse their power in some way, let's say they want to start mining empty blocks, right? This could be considered a type of denial of service attack. And in Decred, it would be possible to make a small change that would then invalidate any blocks that are empty, right? And so this also prevents hard or minority hard forks or contentious hard forks, because let's say that the SegWit situation was happening in Decred, and we had the Decred miners wanted to fork off and create Decred Cash. Well, the way it's set up is that it's economically prohibitive to actually fork off without the approval of the stakeholders. There's actually a really good Reddit post by the lead Decred developer that goes into all the technical details of why it is economically prohibitive. But basically is that if you try and fork off without the approval of the stakeholders, which is the actual holders, then they're not going to validate your blocks. So you can mine proof of work blocks all day long, but they're not going to be validated by the proof of stake side. And so you're not going to get your mining reward, and you're just going to be spinning your wheels. And so if you try and go against what the stakers want, which is what the Decred holders want, then you're going to be losing a lot of money. So that's the first big thing that Decred shoots out or sets out to address. And the second is funding. So in Decred, 10% of every block reward goes to a development fund. This development fund is used for anything to add value to Decred. It pays for dev work, design work, marketing, business development. It will allow Decred to actually build out like traditional go-to-market teams, you know, like business development people and stuff, sales people. But this fund is actually controlled by the stakeholders. So we are just now implementing what's called a proposal system. So if you're a Decred developer, or you're a Decred designer or a marketer, and you have a good idea, or you want to do some work for Decred, you'll submit a proposal and have the stakeholders vote on it. And the stakeholders decide how those funds are spent. So Decred, it's a self-funding cryptocurrency, whereas compared to other cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, where you have Blockstream is they're the core developers in Bitcoin, and they're VC funded. So this has the potential to create conflicts of interest down the road, where maybe the VC's interests don't necessarily line up with long-term Bitcoin holders' interests, or those diverge at some point. Then you have cryptocurrencies like Litecoin or Monero that rely on community donations. And so, you know, this is a great way right now when times are good, but community donations, you know, they're not always consistent. They may dry up, and it's hard to really you know, make set plans and rely on community donation. So the fact that Decred has this self-funding mechanism built in that's controlled by the stakeholders, that uses the Polydia, which is our proposal system that I was talking about, that's what, you know, we mean by governance when we say Decred is Bitcoin with better governance.
It's exactly how I think of it too.
Yeah, and I think another thing that that a project that's going to be successful in the future needs to have is security. You know, something that doesn't allow it to be usurped by somebody that has tons of money just sitting there right then and there. And that's kind of the nice part about the voting system that Luke started to touch on, is, you know, you can purchase, and you should purchase lots of tickets, and that's going to be able to provide your consensus on those blocks, because those tickets are verifying the blocks that allow the proof of work miners to verify, and so on and so on. You know, in Bitcoin, because actually it's cool, Dave Collins ran some pretty neat numbers, but if someone were to attack the Bitcoin network, you know, it would require roughly $559 million in AMP miners and just hashing power. You know, because of the way that Decred has structured the mining with the blocks needing to be verified by the votes, and there's over 41,000 kind of tickets that are just sitting there. Needs to be 5 tickets per block in order for the blocks to be verified. Block times are about every 5 minutes. It'd be roughly about $12.5 billion to attack the Decred network. And so just being able to have that kind of security layer built in that also provides consensus, that also is allowing to push through proposals, is just amazing. Just that it all kind of meshes together and works together. I mean, I don't know. It always kind of puts me in awe of just the fact it's like, wow, this thing is working together. But a project needs to have that. You know, legitimate projects need to have things that work together in order for them to be built on and built with consensus. And so,
yeah, absolutely. And you can kind of think of Decred voting as shareholder voting, or similar to what shareholder voting is in a corporation, right? Decred follows the skin in the game principle. The more Decred you own, the more potential votes you can cast, and this makes sure to align incentives. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there as well.
So I have a quick question. I'm going to compare this with Ethereum, because Ethereum is going to be going proof of stake soon. And to stake your coins, you have to have just a ridiculous amount to new adopters or new people that obtain Ethereum. So what is the minimum requirement? Because I don't even know this myself. What's the minimum requirement to stake Decred? Because I don't stake Decred, I just have it in a wallet.
So right now, I mean, that number kind of fluctuates up and down, and it's based on a few different things. So right now, the current ticket price is about 71 Decred.
That's not bad.
No, but the nice thing is, even though that's because that's still like $3,500, and so people are like, oh, like that's a lot of money.
4,000.
I don't have it, to put down. Well, eventually, ticket splitting is going to be coming down the line when there is the Lightning Network, and you're going to be able to kind of proportionately put the amount of Decred that you have towards a ticket, and you're going to be able to kind of indicate, like on a ticket that is voting yes or no or abstaining, and you're going to be able to get a portion of that block reward for that ticket portion, or rather the Decred portion you contributed to that ticket. But in the meantime, it's still much less than like a Dash masternode, or for what you were saying, that minimum entry for the proof of stake with Ethereum. Because what that does is it puts all the power back in the hands of people that have the entire thing. It doesn't break up the consensus in an equitable way, because there needs to be a balance. You can't have just a couple people that are calling all the shots, because that doesn't.
It's like the system we're in now. The rich keep getting richer. That's basically what Ethereum would be. You
can't have that, but at the same time, you need to be able to incentivize people who are utilizing it and using it to still benefit from having a lot, but still allow the person that has a few to be able to have their voice given, and to be able to have a vote in the system and still be able to benefit from the system. And so that's the nice thing, because these 41,000 tickets that are floating around are all chosen at random. It's it's a lottery system, and so even if I had half of all those tickets, there's no promises that my tickets are going to go on the blocks, or that they're going to vote in the time frame that I want. And so if I were to just go out and buy a bunch of tickets, there's no guarantees that they're going to vote when I want, that they're going to come up at the right times and vote on a specific block if I was trying to do something malicious. And so it really is a unique system.
Yeah, and so this is also one of the biggest differences between Decred and Dash, or Decred and Ethereum, is the fact that in Dash only masternodes can vote on proposals, and it costs 1,000 Dash to run a masternode. So I don't know what Dash is at right now. It's
like
above
600.
600. Okay, so that's $600,000 that you have to have in order to participate in the Dash governance. And so it's very, very prohibitive. And it's also, in order to submit a proposal in Dash, it costs 5 Dash, which is also cost prohibitive. So Decred, right now, like Trace said, it does cost like $4,000 to participate in the governance, but ticket splitting is one of the most highly requested features. And when we get Lightning Network, we'll be able to have ticket splitting. So then you'll be able to participate in Decred governance, no matter how small of a stake you actually own in Decred, which is super important. But going back to your point of, the wealthy staying or keeping their positions through these proof of stake systems. So Decred's block reward is 60% proof of work, 30% proof of stake, 10% development subsidy. And it was specifically designed with those numbers so that the proof of stake people, even if you're one of the very early adopters, you're constantly getting diluted down by that proof of work, because the proof of work reward is double the proof of stake reward. So if you're just staking your Decred, you're constantly getting diluted down. And so for you to maintain the same relative percentage of control over the Decred network, it's very, very expensive. You have to continue not only stake all of your Decred, but then you have to continually buy Decred basically every day. Whereas with Dash, the block reward is 45% proof of stake, 45% proof of work. So that dilution isn't nearly as much. And then in Ethereum, right, with just pure proof of stake, you're not getting diluted at all. And so that's also one of the big distinctions between Decred and other cryptocurrencies that have either hybrid consensus algorithms or proof of stake.
Yeah, I have a quick question. So when you say proof of stake with $4,000 initial investment with Decred, as of right now, to actually stake your coins. Now, we all know Dash is a really low supply. It has a total supply of almost like 6.5 million Decred. Yeah. So that's just a really, really low supply. And I think that Decred will easily be, in my opinion, next year, it should be well above, triple digits, at least $100 in my opinion. I mean, the supply says it alone. Of course, we have the whole roadmap and everything. So if this coin becomes, let's say, $250, $300 by next year, wouldn't that increase the initial price to start staking your coins if you're a later adopter?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, it would for right now, but that's where, so we keep saying ticket splitting. I don't know if anybody knows what that actually means. So what ticket splitting means is that when we implement the Lightning Network, we'll be able to implement ticket splitting, which means that you can split a ticket up. Normally a ticket would cost what, like 70 Decred right now, which is a little over 4,000. You can split a ticket up into an infinite number of parts. And so what you can do by that is then you can allow people with just, 10 Decred to still get a part of a ticket and still cast a vote in the governance process. So once that's implemented, like no matter how much or how little Decred you own, if you want to participate in the governance process, you'll be able to. Does that answer your question? Is that what you're?
No, absolutely. About? Yeah. So it's basically it's basically an equality aspect to the whole proof of stake concept with the tickets. Splitting them individually. It's like Satoshis in a Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is also a difference between Dash and Decred. Dash has masternode shares where you can buy a portion of a masternode and you can get the proof of stake reward, but you're not allowed to actually vote. Only the owners of the masternodes can vote. And so that's how it differs from ticket splitting and masternode shares.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is, even if like a masternode was extremely affordable and all of that, there's nothing stopping you from just selling your voting on a proposal that benefits you, and then selling your masternode. Like you can do that, instantaneously, more or less, because once your wallet dips below 1,000, you lose your masternode status. But with Decred, you're locked in. When you contribute and you purchase a ticket for that 71 Decred, there's a period of immaturity that the ticket goes through, and then once it becomes an active ticket, which is usually in about a day, the ticket can vote anywhere between 24 hours to like 144 days, anywhere in that realm. And so there's really not a lot of guarantee, but that's kind of where we get the skin in the game principle, because you're committing to the fact that you're going to vote for something on the network that's going to contribute something of value to the project. So it pretty much makes everyone that wants to participate really participate and not just back out randomly. It makes them truly invest in the project. And that kind of brings us to our next point of, you kind of mentioned like Decred's price, and all these different projects are, skyrocketing, Bitcoin's going up and all these prices are going up. But, what gives a currency value? Because we see some of these projects that really are, extremely high. We see things like H-Share, which pretty much copied everything that Decred's done, and they raise
copy and paste coins.
For those of you that don't know, H-Share forked the Decred repo, changed like a couple variables, and now has a market cap like 3 or 4 times that of Decred. It's pretty ridiculous.
And they raised 100 million in ICO, but we don't have to.
So what do you think? What do you think has caused that though? Do you think it's because it's the times we're in with ICOs and whatnot, or do you think it's like something else?
No, I think it's the consensus deal, because people, just think of look at Tezos right now. I don't
Tezos was a fail.
Get into all that, but people got really excited about Tezos because they're starting to feel that need and desire for consensus, because they're seeing the issues that are coming with the different nodes being ran and who's having all the hash power to be able to make the major decisions going down the road. And so Tezos is attractive because it's promising that everything that Decred's already doing. H-Shares was attractive because people didn't even really know what Decred is and still don't really know, but now it's becoming more and more at the forefront of people's minds, because now it's starting to get the volume that it deserves. But it's the consensus and the governance model that Decred offers, and people want it. People want to be able to make sure that these things, that cryptocurrency blockchain technology doesn't just crash and burn because people try to make a quick buck.
Yeah, that's what it is right now. I mean, go ahead.
Right. So I have a slightly different opinion, right? It's just ICOs are new, right? 2017 was the year of ICOs, and the market just didn't know how to price them at first. But even if you look at now compared to a couple months ago, the market has largely corrected. ICOs aren't doing nearly as well anymore. You're still getting these copy and paste jobs, but I think it's the growing pains that the ecosystem needs to go through, right? People are going to lose their money when they invest in these copy and paste jobs, and then people will learn their lesson and the ecosystem will mature. If you look at Bitcoin, there have been, all these forks this year, but each one has had less of an impact on the actual price. Like if you look at the volatility leading up to the Bitcoin Cash fork and then the volatility afterwards, it was far greater than the volatility. I may be, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was far greater than the volatility compared to the SegWit 2x fork. And so in my mind, what that means is that the market is learning, and basically in the future, when these forks happen, people will just like shrug them off. Like they won't immediately think like, oh, this has value, like, which is kind of the default state right now. People will have to prove why they have value. And, I think it all just goes back to, it's a new space that's growing really rapidly. New people don't know where to put their money. And so they get caught up in like the PR propaganda that these projects push out. But I don't think that it will be nearly as bad next year. And I think that it'll be like a self-correcting process.
Yeah. My input on that is that, I mean, we all know, I mean, I don't know how long you guys have been in blockchain technology or like a Bitcoin and whatnot. I'm sure probably longer than me. Bitcoin is, and I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist. I actually favor these altcoins because I think that they add to the value of acting as a currency. Bitcoin can't do that. Even if we implemented everything to the segregated witness available network, it just wouldn't be fast. It wouldn't be as fast as Litecoin, at least, either. So I think that Bitcoin is not. It's just the most inconvenient coin. You have high transactions. You have the lack of consensus, like you guys were talking about with Decred. So I feel like next year is going to be like a huge altcoin boom, whether or not Bitcoin decides to tag along, because there's a lot of things going on with Bitcoin in the attack with Bcash, and then you have all these forks coming in. And the issue is that the forks that are sustaining this market cap, that's what concerns me, is like all these forks are sustaining market cap. What do you guys think of that? Sorry for jumping all over the place. I'm like half asleep.
No, that's okay. Yeah, and I think that kind of gets into where I was kind of trying to push the conversation was, with all these different forks, it's basically making money out of thin air. And as we are trying to look down the future, kind of looking into the crystal ball of cryptocurrency, trying to like take price out of the picture, which is kind of difficult. We kind of touched on these copycat projects, 8shares and the different Bitcoin forks that have come along. But I think, what we need to look at is what is going to have the foundations to be able to still be relevant and still make strategic and changes with consensus in the future to be able to be bonded into mainstream. What's going to allow payment systems? Because like, for instance, like Decred is getting implemented with Globy. If you guys don't know, it's an online payment processor that's going to allow Decred to work as even more digital cash. But okay, great, Decred's getting taken as digital cash, but it's still not as instantaneous as a credit card transaction or anything along those lines. But I think as the value of things keep going up and going up and going up, and as those prices keep going up, there needs to be a show of actual real world use. And I think that's going to be what kind of separates the wheat from the chaff, to use that example.
I completely agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree more. That's why I think like anonymity coins are doing so well, right? Like Monero and both Zcashes, because they're already being their use case is already being used on like the darknet markets and things like that, right? And going back to your point, Carson, about like the altcoin rally next year and whether or not Bitcoin will keep up. So I think that right now we're going through this period of professionalization of the industry, right?
Yes.
And so that means that like, Bitcoin options are coming online, and then hopefully a Bitcoin ETF will. But, these as cryptocurrencies, everybody knows cryptocurrencies have a horrible user experience. That's the number one thing preventing mass adoption, I think, is just the user
simplicity.
Experience. Exactly. Yeah. And so as these more traditional security products are developed for cryptocurrencies, I think that's going to fuel a lot of the growth in the ecosystem next year. And just because Bitcoin is the main focus right now of Wall Street, it's what they're most familiar with. I think that it's going to benefit a lot from that. But
yeah, it's the most well branded. I mean, like we were just talking about, Bitcoin is a very inconvenient coin. when it comes to the block size and it comes to the timing and the price of transactions. So, and I know you're saying like the altcoin party next year that I'm talking about is what I think it's going to be is going to be more of a narrowing down to the focus of the actual tech and development on the coins. I don't think it's going to be all of these mysterious coins that are copy and paste. To have like, I mean, I could call out so many coins, even coins that I've traded. They're literally, I don't even want to say the bad word, but they're crap coins. They're total crap coins. So it's like, I want to see, and I think this is what's going to happen. We're going to see a narrowing down of the actual useful, that actually have a use case, good developer team that actually could serve as a cryptocurrency. That's what I think is going to happen next year. And I'm a huge advocate of segregated witness coins like Decred, Vertcoin, Litecoin. I think they could all play a role in this together. It's almost going to act as if like they're banks. You have Wells Fargo, you have TD Bank, you have all these different types of banks. That's how I think these specific coins, and I'm sticking with, Bitcoin, the rest of the segregated witness coins, I know there's a lot, but that's what I think is going to happen. I mean, that's my spiel.
Yeah. So to tie all of this back together, all three of us just said. So yes, as the industry professionalizes, like the same stuff that has passed or that has, gotten market cap gains in 2017 is not going to work in 2018. And it's actually going to rely on actual real use cases, like what Trace was saying. What coins are actually being used for payments? What coins are actually fulfilling their use case and not just these empty promises. And so I'm really excited about Decred in that regard. Like there's a lot of exciting stuff, coming up. We've got privacy implementation coming up soon. We've got Lightning Network coming up soon. I mean, we've got our proposal system like coming up is in the process of being launched right now. So we're going to become the world's first official DAO, or we're on the road to becoming the world's first official DAO. But I'm very excited about what Decred has in store for 2018. And I think one of the logical steps for Decred is payments, like Trace was talking about.
People need to listen up. This is real stuff. I think that I'm 100% with you on that.
Exactly. And, having a foundation for it all, because you're right, there's not just one. I mean, it'd be great and it'd be easy if it was just like the one crypto dollar and that was just everything that everybody used and it had every single use case, but it's not reality. And there's a lot of specificity and there's a lot of niches that are being met that aren't necessarily ready to be met. But having something that has the foundations built to build out anything, basically a factory that can be able to fabricate anything that it needs to, is of utmost importance. And that's what something like Decred is able to do. If we want to go ahead and, implement, Lightning Network, we can. We just did, and you guys can go take a look at the vote. I don't know if we're able to link the different on-chain votes that took place that pushed all this through, but you can. If we want to change the algorithm going forward, for instance, like we had changed the ticket price algorithm because it was spiking back and forth, and it got voted on and it got pushed through and it changed, and now it's super constant. And so it's constantly being refined, it's constantly being changed, but with consensus. And that's what cryptocurrency needs. It needs continued development, because think of how much has changed in the past 6 months. It's like crazy.
Unbelievable.
What's happened in the past 6 months. And if we need something that can keep up with that pace, but is still able to implement in a way that is not only efficient, but effective, because things can get rolled out really quickly. Bitcoin Gold got rolled out really quickly and it didn't do so hot. And different projects have gotten rolled out really quickly and they turn out to be vaporware. And so having the ability to have a stable platform to do these things and be able to implement, different coins like Litecoin, Bitcoin, along the entire path is of utmost importance. And so it's really exciting. But Luke, I wasn't sure, was there any questions in the live stream?
It's been hard to keep up with the live chat. Your followers are quite chatty. But you hit on one.
It's the Hedge family.
Yeah, exactly.
The Hedge family.
Trace, you hit on one point about Decred that's overlooked a lot of times that I just wanted to mention and clarify in the fact that Decred is the only cryptocurrency with binding on-chain votes. So what that means is that when we vote on something, the software for that implementation is already uploaded to the network, and if the vote passes, then it automatically switches to the new network. No human intervention is necessary. Whereas with something like voting on Dash, right, it's they vote and they say, hey, we want you guys to work on this, but then the actual release process is very similar to the release process in like Bitcoin or something, where you're sending the software binaries to the miners and you're saying, hey, run it. But in Decred, it's already preloaded into the network and everything switches automatically. And if they don't follow the new chain, then their blocks won't be validated. So just wanted to clarify the difference between binding votes and signaling votes.
Well, I look at Decred as a self-sustainable coin. That's really what it is. It's self-governance, self-sustainable. Isn't that what the motive is, essentially?
Yeah, absolutely. It's this new type of organizational structure, right? Like it's self-funded, it's self-governed, it's not limited by borders, and it's a meritocracy, right? Like you can. At this point, it's not quite possible to be totally anonymous just because we're not officially a DAO yet. But when we become a DAO, there's going to be a point in the future where you can have like a career in Decred as an anonymous person based solely on the reputation of your contributions, right? And so it just opens up this whole new, so much potential for this whole new type of organizational structure where hopefully we're going to like attract the smartest people from all over the world to come and build on top of Decred.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's do it.
If we want to put through a proposal, hey, let's put a banana stand on every single corner in downtown Los Angeles with a Decred logo on it. You can put forth that proposal. Probably won't go through, but you could put it forth, and there's an opportunity for that to get implemented, just to be able to have that power, just someone who has a Decred to be able to say, even if they don't have a lot, to be able to put something up like that, or to be able to contribute their work and actually have a place. The little guy has a voice. The little guy has power. Everyone has a voice in this, and I think that's what everyone's been looking for. It's like Decred is the thing that everyone's wanted but didn't know already existed.
Everyone, good.
Someone in the chat just said, we are the cypherpunk corporation of the future. And I thought that was very fitting.
Yeah.
That should be the new motto of Decred.
Yeah.
But yeah. I had a quick thing to say. I totally forgot it, but it was really important. I'm trying to think of what I was going to say. I'm losing my mind over here.
No, that's okay.
All right. When it gets to me, I'll speak up.
Okay. Yeah. I'm trying to think. So yeah.
So if you have a question, go ahead and post it in the chat. So we're gonna have to wrap up here in a couple of minutes. So if you have anything, let us know. But I'm not seeing anything. So.
Does anybody have any questions, Hedge family?
I guess we did a really good job in explaining stuff.
Yeah, right.
One thing
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what do you think is going to happen with Bitcoin? And I just want your opinion. I want your thought process on this. You have all these attacks with Bitcoin. You have the monopolization, no consensus, the monopolization of mining, all of these issues, and it's not going to end. It's going to be continued. These forks, there's going to be tons of forks because it's easy to do when you have enough power in your hands. So, I mean, you have all these forks. You've got the original Bitcoin chain, and a lot of people are talking about Bitcoin Cash and things like that and how it's going to possibly replace Bitcoin, which is never going to happen. But what do you think? I mean, I have a feeling that the one quick fix with all of this to allow the actual coins that can be convenient and actually have simplicity and consensus to an extent would be the end of Bitcoin, which is the worst thing to say. I mean, I started off on Bitcoin, but Bitcoin has caused so much chaos, confusion. It's been the leader of FUD, and all these altcoins are just sitting here waiting to get picked up with interest and actually look at the technology, not just invest into something because it's the most well-branded and the original OG coin. So what are your personal thoughts and your thought process on that theory?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin, it was the OG. Bitcoin has been around for the longest, absolutely, and it was at the forefront of this cryptocurrency movement. I think it's always I don't think it's gonna disappear. I think it's going to remain more as like a store of value. I think over these next couple of years, it's going to start to become very clear what use cases are relevant. Just kind of how we were starting to get into, is Decred going to be that digital cash and going to be that platform to allow, different cryptocurrencies to mesh between one another and kind of be that platform, who knows? But, Bitcoin may very well be just that digital cash. It's similar as like sending a brick of gold. Yeah, it's not as quick. It's not as instantaneous necessarily as like a Decred or Litecoin and anything along those lines, but it still has use in the sense of, these cryptocurrencies have scarcity. This has the technology behind it. It has the branding. And so it could be like a digital brick of gold where it's not as convenient to send, but it still has that intrinsic value behind it where it's maybe not being used as an everyday transacting tool.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of agree with you. I think that Bitcoin is going to be the wealth of the process of going through the actual adoption phase. I don't really think Bitcoin's going to be adopted yet. It's going to be the wealth aspect of the next, full revolution with the financial system. I mean, that would make sense.
Yeah, I'm curious. Luke, do you have any thoughts?
So like the biggest thing, okay, so my opinion, I don't know if this will be an unpopular opinion or not, is that Bitcoin, right, it's fulfilling the store of value use case right now. And the most important thing in a store of value is not necessarily the fastest transaction times, not necessarily the lowest fees, but the highest security. So the most secure network, the most decentralized network, the network with the most hashing power, and the network with the longest successful track record, right? This is what is important in store of value. And yes, mining has been very centralized in the past, but the market is correcting that right now. There are like new ASIC companies for Bitcoin coming online, as we speak now, and hopefully in the future it's going to become much more decentralized. So I think Bitcoin, as long as there is there's nothing that compromises its security, then it's going to keep its store value title because, it has the network effects right now. And the only thing that will kill the Bitcoin network effects is if that security element gets compromised in any way, in my opinion, right? And so the way I see the future unfolding is that, Bitcoin will be used for super high value transactions, storing your life savings or things like that. And then all these other, there's going to be, as the ecosystem evolves, there's going to be so many other use cases that emerge, right? And so these other altcoins will fulfill those use cases. Like in Decred's governance model allows it to not get bogged down in political gridlock. It allows it to hopefully like innovate fast and keep ahead of its competition and fund its own development, right? So this is going to be really important in like the payments use case or other use cases as emerge, but it's still not enough to take down the network effects that Bitcoin currently has. So it's Bitcoin's kind of game to lose in a sense. Like as long as Bitcoin doesn't kill itself, or something doesn't kill Bitcoin, then
mining profitability.
Yeah. But who knows? We'll see how it plays out. Like we're still in the early innings. Like, yeah.
Exactly. Oh, this is infancy.
Yeah.
It's getting close to adoption though. I think it's closer than we think. I really do.
Every single day it gets a little bit closer, which is exciting. But I think the biggest thing is, I don't think Bitcoin's necessarily going to go away. But I think it's not going to get to the point that everyone wants it to get nearly quick enough to stay as relevant as it wants to, because of the very fact that developers and users and miners cannot agree on how to streamline the different changes they want to implement. And that's why I think Decred overall has the biggest value proposition to offer, because it has a working governance model that incorporates the proof of work that is required to really maintain a secure network. We have ASICs coming online relatively soon, within the next few months, which is super exciting. Not so much because of the profitability aspects of ASICs, but just the hashing power that ASICs bring a lot more security to the network, which is going to be securing Decred that much more. But then, just the ability to be able to have a true consensus method that's able to have that governance that's on chain, to be able to make the changes that everyone wants to see implemented. And it's able to do it, within a couple months versus, sometimes a year, as Bitcoin's trying to roll these things out, which is just kind of crazy because the space changes so quickly, so fast. And if we're expecting to see true change, true implementation, true mainstream adoption, there needs to be a degree of not only, what's the word? It needs to be very visible. It needs to be transparent, and that's something that Decred's able to offer. It's able to show the votes and everything leading up to that point where, not everyone's as technical and able to, jump into like the Git and see, exactly what's getting implemented and what's going on. But you're able to have time at least to process what's going on, and that these changes that are being developed are well advertised, and that you get to participate in that, I think is the major game changer. And I don't know if you want to touch any more on that, Luke.
I was answering questions in the chat, so I wasn't paying attention.
No, you're good. Yeah, but Carson, do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I was just curious. What makes you think that ASIC mining or introducing ASICs to the to Decred? What makes you think that it's going to secure it to a further extent? I just want to know your mindset. What's the incentive?
Yeah, so like one of the biggest things that's prevented Decred from having true, like really consistent hashing power, for instance. And like Saya, you can watch the previous Decred assembly episodes about this, but what happens is you can kind of dual mine. If you're mining Ethereum, you can kind of dual mine Decred. Mm-hmm. And so what that does is, people are just constantly dumping it. They don't have any financial implications for wanting to mine Decred. And so what ASICs do is, ASICs are pretty expensive, but the hashing power is top notch, but it's only specific to mining that specific coin. It's specific to mining Decred, specific to all these things.
Yeah.
And right now, we have such a low market capital that, if there was enough hashing power to come online, it could really do some crazy things. It'd be very, very expensive, just kind of how I went over, it'd be billions of dollars worth of a hashing power attack, but it could be done. What this does is not only does it, increase the hashing power that each individual person that has an ASIC miner does, but it just allows the people that are truly contributing to the community to be able to have the hashing power behind that.
And so is it basically irrelevant with the proof of stake and proof of work? So let's say you have the ASICs on the proof of work, and you're talking about how the proof of stake and proof of work have to agree with each other. So it doesn't really matter that it is ASIC resistant, but it just gives that extra push, since I'm not ASIC resistant, sorry. When you have ASICs on the network, you get more reward. So it's not having ASICs that's the incentive. It's more so having more of a reward, because you are never going to really get past the consensus issue because you have the proof of stake with the proof of work. So regardless if it's GPUs or ASICs, it doesn't matter. Is that what you're...
The hashing, no, it's more so that the hashing power is staying consistent.
Okay.
It's keeping the network consistent with the hash power.
Do you get what I'm trying to say, though? Or?
I think I kind of get it. And so in my mind, one of the biggest benefits of ASICs is security. ASICs, it's possible to develop ASICs for any algorithm. Even if an algorithm is ASIC resistant, it will be much more expensive to develop an ASIC for it, but it's still possible. And so if a network does not have ASICs, or if a cryptocurrency does not have ASICs like Decred, then that leaves the possibility for a potential attack where somebody develops ASICs, or a group of whales develop ASICs in private, and then 30 ASICs could overpower the entire Decred network right now, and 51% attacks could be possible. And even though we still have that proof of stake aspect to our consensus algorithm, there's still a whole lot of havoc that could be wreaked by somebody with the majority hash power. And so it's the whole idea is that if it's possible, we would rather go ahead and do it and make it available to everybody, rather than somebody do it in private and potentially attack the network with it. And then as the ecosystem matures, I think this is going to be one of the biggest issues with cryptocurrencies that don't have ASICs, is there's going to become basically derivative investment options will become available for all these major cryptocurrencies, like the ability to buy, options, puts and calls on these cryptocurrencies. And so if you're able to make huge leverage bets using options against a cryptocurrency, develop an ASIC in private, and then attack that network, even if it's just for a day, just to cause a huge price decrease for a day, you can still potentially pay off your investment and make a profit using options or leveraged bets like that. And so that's something very difficult to protect against once once we get to that point. Like we're not to that point yet, but I think not having ASICs will just leave you vulnerable to something like that. Like the incentive there exists, right? Like if you get big enough, it's going to become profitable enough for somebody to pull off an attack like that.
Since it's vulnerable already, might as well, accept ASICs and create an ASIC chip for Decred, right?
Exactly.
I mean, even
like
in
the devil we know is better than the devil we don't know.
Exactly.
Well, and even in the state of the network right now, you would need to have about 29% of the hash power and 33% of the stake, which if you kind of calculate how much that would really cost, I mean, it's like $12.5 billion. I mean, that's not a small amount of money to really, implement an attack right now. I think ASIC's true value starts to come into the fold. And I think, Luke, you're really touched on it, was just the ability to be able to have the consistency aspect and be able to have the hashing power in the hands of the community that's using it, not people that are just trying to twist things to make quick moves, whether they're trading, in the market and trying to trade options like that. But yeah, I mean, as far as, the show today, we really appreciate all you guys coming. Carson specifically, thank you so much for coming on the show. Are there any last thoughts that you guys would like to touch on?
So what's your community called? The Hedge community or the
Hedge family?
Hedge family. Okay.
It's the Hedge family. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, guys. Glad to have you and host you. You guys have been super active in the chat, which is great.
Make sure to smash that like button and share this video on Twitter.
Totally. Do it.
Awesome.
Subscribe to the Decred YouTube.
Spread the word.
We put out a lot of good content.
Yep. Take a look, guys. You won't be disappointed. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you.
All right. Thank you, guys.